Hi everybody, welcome to the Inspiration Station. My name is Debbie and I'm really glad you've joined me today. My video today will be a process video for a layout that I created about my day trip to the Old Sturbridge Village in Sturbridge, Massachusetts. If you're not from New England, you may not know about Sturbridge Village, but every kid in New England, I think, has been there on a field trip at least once in their life. Sturbridge Village is a living history museum, which means they have buildings and artifacts from the Colonial era, and they have recreated a lot of things, but a lot of things are also authentic. So the page that I'm doing here is about a pottery building. The building is actually authentic. It was moved from an area in Connecticut up to the museum, but a lot of the other things, like the kiln that's in one of the photos, is a reproduction. This is the starting point of my page. I loved the way this photo came out. I loved the way that the sun was hitting the pottery, and so that became my focal image for the page. The rest of the pictures are supporting photos. You see the kiln down there at the bottom. That is a reproduction. There is a placard on the left that tells about the village, or the pottery building at least. And I was looking for some papers that would match the feel of the era, which being colonial times. I found this Simple Stories pad. The line is called Remember, and it's supposed to be more of a memorial line, but I thought the look of it was perfect for colonial times. And actually, if you look really closely at that photo I'm picking up there, the sign, the wallpaper behind it has almost an identical print to that yellow piece of paper that I'm holding. So I thought that was a neat coincidence. I chose these papers from the pad. I really liked the way they looked, and I think they'll go nicely with my photos. I did not have the color vibe that matched. I loved this paper. It's not exactly a color vibe, and it doesn't match exactly the olive or the moss color. It's just slightly different. So I am going to map my photos in this. I don't have enough to do a lot with it, but I do have enough to map my photos. So that's where I'm going to start. I'm showing on the other side where some cut aparts I probably won't use, but I did want to possibly fussy cut that floral element. So those are the papers that I'm going to use, and in a moment you'll see the sketch that I was inspired by. So there is a Facebook group called Christy's Beautiful Life, and she does 30 days of sketches several times a year. I don't know which series this was from, but this sketch was created by a fellow YouTuber. Her name is Helen Ding. I believe she's from Australia, and she does some beautiful pages. If you haven't visited her, please go check her out on YouTube. I love the way this page looked. My main photo obviously was vertical instead of horizontal. So when I printed this out, a little bit crooked, I intended to turn it so that I could use this type of layout. I did try to stick close to the sketch. I did not put the background paper on an angle. I really loved the look on the sketch, but I didn't think it was appropriate for these kind of old-fashioned type photos. I thought the slant might be a little too contemporary. But I am going to use the idea of the paper strip behind the photos. And this is just a printout about the pottery shed or the builder, and I'm going to use that as my journaling, but I don't really want to take up space on the page. So what I plan to do is either use a flip flap or make some sort of a flip up to put that under, so it'll be accessible, because I won't remember any details about this. I probably don't now, and it's only been a couple of weeks, but at least the information's there, and I can flip up the photo and see it when I want to remember what it was all about. So to get started, I'm going to mat all of my photos. I did not make you watch this whole thing. I tried to speed it up and kind of jump through a little bit because, people know how to mat their photos. They don't need to see 3 minutes of that. But that's where I'm starting. The photos will be matted. And I'm doing this voiceover a little bit later, so I have to kind of follow along with it. I am going to overlap the papers so that I can cover the full 12 inches. I've chosen to use this brown paper as a strip on either side of that column. And so I'm just cutting off, I believe they're 1/2 inch strips, only about 1/4 of an inch shows, but I really did not measure. I went by the little icons that are on there. I can't tell from the photo here if they are, I think they're diamonds, but whatever that little dot is on the brown, I just made sure that it was equally showing on both sides. So I'll glue those papers down, and I don't generally commit to a lot of things until I'm absolutely sure. But I know that this particular section of the page I was happy with, so I'm going to stick that down before I get going. And you'll see in the upper right that I have fussy cut an image from one of the papers. I don't end up using that, so it's a beautiful piece and I've put it aside for a future project, but I don't end up using it. I do have a large packet of the ephemera. I think they're called bits and pieces or big bits or something. I don't know. It's from the same Remember line from Simple Stories. They are very large florals. There's a few smaller pieces in there, and I will end up using those as my embellishments. But for now, I'm just going to get this background done. Now that seam in the middle is going to be covered up mostly by the photos, so I'm not really worried about it. I noticed as I'm putting this together, doing the voiceover, that the placement of the photos kind of moved around throughout the process. I really should get in the habit of taking a photo once I figure out where things are going to go so that I can refer back to it and put them back where I had them. But it really doesn't matter. In the end, I still like the way the page came out, even if it's not exactly the same as where I started. So you'll see I have my tray here full of all those large ephemera bits, the big florals, and I'm just playing around trying to decide how to make my clusters. I did want to include 3 clusters on the page, and I wanted it to flow through the page sort of from the bottom right over to the left and then back up to the top right, so that butterfly seems to be kind of flying off of the page. The pieces were very large though, so I did struggle trying to come up with how they were going to end up without being overwhelming. And this is where I realized that I did not make the flap for that, the journaling. I glued the photo down and forgot to make the flap for the journaling. So I'm going back and I'm just making from cardstock a flap. It's, I guess it's 3 inches by 8 inches is the cardstock, and I folded it. And I will stick the journaling inside, and then I'll put the photo on top. Now, the first time I stuck it down, I made the mistake of not lining the top directly up. And so when you try to flip it up, it doesn't open. So I had to pull it off and get it scooched right up to the top of that. And that worked fine. So I'll get that down, and then I believe I then adhere all of those pieces that are floating around. And again, they probably didn't stay in the same place as when I started, because I just kind of go as I go. This is a Lawn Fawn stamp that's made for interactive cards, and I used it to put a little saying on the tab I made. I made a small tab, just folded over a piece of paper. It says "Lift Here." The first time I stamped it and went to put it under there, it looked a little crooked to me, so I just flipped it over, stamped it again, and then glued it onto that flap. So now the viewer will know that there's something in there that they can lift up. I will probably slit the page protector so that the photo ends up on the outside, so it's easy to access. So I'm just going to do all of my little embellishments here. I had worked on a title I was going to cut on the Cricut. The first one that I made, I found a great font online. I'm not sure if it was DaFont or 1001 Fonts, but one of those free font sites that gave me the look of Colonial lettering, and I really liked it. But in order to fit it on the page, I needed to make it really small, and so it was very tedious. So you'll see in a minute when I get to the title part that I've used the print and cut feature. So I typed out the title in a brown ink and put it into Cricut, and then did an offset on it and just print and cut the title. I usually like to have them cut. I like the dimension that it gives having all the cardstock, but it was so small, all those little pieces, that it was going to be fiddly and I wasn't going to be able to get everything lined up properly. So you'll see here I'm adding some foam to some of the embellishments to lift them up. That butterfly hadn't been stuck down, so it almost flew off the page. Oh, before I put the title on, yes, I did pull out my old Wendy Vecchi, they're like Nouveau drops. I forgot what they're called. Enamel accents, I think. I thought it was the perfect shade of brown. I honestly don't know why I have it. I must have gotten it in a class or something, because I normally wouldn't have bought a brown, but this worked perfectly. So if you've never used this, it's very much like Nouveau drops, but the tip I think is better. I can get much tinier drops, much neater, and they don't end up with that Hershey kiss at the top. They're very self-leveling. So at this point I realized I really needed to mat the entire page. I needed something to sort of frame it. So I did find a piece of Simple Stories paper. It's not Color Vibe. It was actually from one of their old Christmas lines called Holly Jolly, and it was the perfect green. So I didn't bother, gutting it out or anything. I'm just going to stick it down. I had a bunch of it. There's my title that I cut on the Cricut, and at first I was going to use these foam strips, but I realized that the lettering was so small that it wasn't going to be able to go on there and not be seen through the front. So I pulled out these teeny tiny little foam squares. All the foam adhesives that I use are scrapbook adhesive by 3L. I really love their products. These are, I believe they're 1 millimeter by 1 millimeter, something like that. They're super tiny. So I did struggle with them. I ended up pulling out my tweezers and trying to get those on there in the end. So that's the last thing that I need to do on the page, is put the title down. It was a little sticky to my fingers there, but I love the font. I love the way it came out. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you did, please give it a like, thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet, I would appreciate it if you do. I would certainly love to have more subscribers to my channel. So I thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Have a great day.